Good evening, ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. This is Alex, coming at you from the underworld, and welcome back to another episode of... This weekend, I have my best friend Connie returning as my special guest, as we recently buddy read with our good online friend Hanny, the anthology called When Things Get Dark, edited by Ellen Datlow. Now, before I get started, I would just like to note that Connie and myself are not Jackson experts whatsoever, because we've always lived in The Castle, The Haunting of Hill House, and The Lottery. But even with us only having read those classics, we were still able to see Jackson's style and influence reflected greatly in this book. But before I get too far ahead of myself, let's see what's been new with Connie.
Hey guys, I'm so glad to be back. Thank you for having me back.
Of course.
Of course. I'm so ready to dive into this great book we're going to be reviewing. It's been pretty much business as usual with me, work. We hired somebody new, so that's been kind of fun. The pool, which has been kicking my butt, but I digress, so I hate that pool. The yard, my Ben, he's getting ready to start the first grade. Y'all said positive vibes his way. He's a little bit nervous, a little bit shy about it, so pray for us as well, because he's really going to be getting into reading. So send good vibes.
He might end up being on a buddy read with us in about a decade or so.
Yeah, that's my goal. I really want him to have a good love of reading. I really, really do. And he does love being read to. He does.
Just introduce him to Shirley Jackson.
I will. and yeah, that's been pretty much what's been new with me.
Well, now that we've been caught up to date, we would just like to thank Hanny for buddy reading this with us. We had a lot of really great discussions with her in regards to these stories. And since we know Hanny's watching, we hope that she enjoys this review.
Mm-hmm.
So, without further ado, let's join hands and see what happens when things get dark.
Ooh.
As a side note, I just have to brag about my edition of When Things Get Dark, because I'm signed up with the book club known as Nightworms, and they send out these really awesome packages every month. Mm-hmm. But because of them being as awesome as what they are, this book came along with a signed book plate by Ellen Datlow. And because of that, I will totally honor this for my entire life. But anywho, When Things Get Dark is an anthology composed by Ellen Datlow, which focuses on 18 stories that honor Shirley Jackson. Mm-hmm. And among these tales, we have authors like John Langan, Paul Tremblay, Josh Mailerman, Cassandra Call, Stephen Graham Jones, and the list continues.
Mm-hmm. And while many of these tales are told through smoke and mirrors, which Jackson is famous for, we are confronted by ghosts, murders, witchery, small town secrets, dark traditions, and folk horror.
Also, even though these stories do honor Shirley Jackson, that doesn't stop the style of each author from shining through. Mm-hmm. And while a lot of the stories in this present a less is more approach, there are a few stories that really do push the reader's imagination into devastating scenarios. In the introduction of When Things Get Dark, Ellen Datlow explains she had been a Jackson fan ever since she read We Have Always Lived in the Castle, which was during her preteen years. At ReaderCon, where the Shirley Jackson Awards are held, she decided to gather and edit Shirley Jackson-themed stories. Yet she didn't follow through until she met an editor for Titan, where that editor and his colleagues suggested she pursue an anthology of Jackson-themed fiction. She decided then that she didn't want stories riffing on Jackson's own works. Instead, she wanted the contributors to simply reflect Jackson's work and style.
Flashbacks! The Shirley Jackson Awards began in 2007, where Ellen Datlow won an award for her anthology Inferno. Datlow would win again in 2009 for her anthology Poe. 19 new tales inspired by Edgar Allan Poe, and she would win again in 2014 for the anthology Fearful Symmetries. Other achievements include her winning 10 World Fantasy Awards, 5 Bram Stoker Awards, and 8 Hugo Awards. In 2011, she received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Horror Writers Association.
Now, Connie, we have struggled over this moment in the past of who wants to say ready, set, go.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Mm-hmm.
I've strangled you.
Yeah.
You've yelled in my ear.
Yeah. Good times.
Things happen.
Yeah.
It does.
It does. Life happens.
But can't we just agree to perhaps do this together?
I think so. Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now that we have that covered, it's time to move on to the spoilers section.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't read this book before, we're about to reveal some things that could ruin the experience for you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you would like to click away, all you have to do is scroll down to the comments and you'll see that we have a pinned comment at the top with the timestamp in it.
Mm-hmm.
Once you click that timestamp, it will direct you away from the spoilers and bring you to the thoughts section. Now, you only have 17 seconds to do this. So, ready, set, go! Since everyone's had the opportunity to click away, we would like to talk about a few of our favorite stories. First up is For Sale by Owner by Elizabeth Hann.
Oh, good one.
Which this story presents a protagonist by the name of Mary Ann, who explains that throughout her life she had enjoyed snooping around inside these for sale by owner homes.
Mm-hmm.
Then, after the years pass and she becomes more mature, we eventually meet one of her friends by the name of Rose, who also admits that she likes to go inside these for sale by owner homes and snoop around. Then, after learning that, eventually the two of them and their mutual friend Helen go hiking up this large hill where they encounter a for sale by owner house that has sat alone and abandoned for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
And even though Helen feels apprehensive, they all agree that they're going to have a sleepover in this house. And even though that sounds fun and exciting and all of that good stuff, the time that they have in that house changes their friendship forever. So this story creeped me out very early on because the house, it just radiated these bad vibes.
It did. It did.
And when Mary Ann went outside to use the bathroom and she looked up and saw that the house was morphing and everything.
Right?
Oh, it was pure nightmare fuel. And by how this was described and how it played out, it really reminded me of Hill House.
Oh, yeah, I definitely got that.
Yeah, and it made me question, like, is the house or property one of these situations where it was born bad?
I know it leaves you guessing.
It does. And what I really loved about this story, though, was the true horror of it actually happens in the broad open daylight.
Right, it happens in the morning.
And the thing is, we never understand exactly what traumatized Rose.
Never know.
But we just know it was bad.
Yeah, it's bad. We know it was bad.
Not to mention, there's like this whole mysterious side story about a faceless property owner who's been paying land taxes on this place. Yeah, like since the 1800s.
Long time.
And because this is happening in current day, our rational mind is like, okay, well, someone is paying the property taxes by simply using the predecessor's name who might have lived and owned the property before them. But then also at the same time, I'm like, is this getting paid by a ghost?
Right. Is it a ghost? I mean,
it was crazy.
We don't know.
Even though this story is written with a lot of openness, which makes us question exactly what's going on.
Right.
I think it's the mystery that makes this story so scary for me.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
And like with the description and the pacing, the author made me feel like I was actually there and that I had actually stepped onto the property of what could be a haunted house.
Right.
And I was just stuck there. I had to endure it.
Right.
So
I felt that too.
I love how that felt. And I really do love how the author gave us these little nods that suggested of what could be happening.
Yeah.
Such as that little side story in regards to Maiden's Cliff.
The first story I wanted to talk about was The Party by Paul Tremblay.
Yes.
And it focuses on these two women named Jackie and Frances, who are a couple. Now, the story focuses on them going to this work party thrown by Jackie's boss named Jean. Well, when they get inside, they are offered drinks, of course, and the drink is going with the theme of the party, and the drink is simply called The End. Now, around this time, Frances is getting a bad feel. She's getting some bad vibes from everything. Everybody's acting weird. It's just weird. And around this time, which don't help matters much, Jean gets up there to give her speech. And the way she's talking and acting, we need to live it up because tomorrow is not promised. Are we going to make it? Well, then the icing on the cake comes when Frances learns they are expected to stay the night at this house, but no communication going on with the outside world. Now, Frances is like, hell no, what's going on? She has to step outside to take her a cigarette. So she's outside smoking. She's out there looking around and she notices these misshapen mounds at the base of the trees. She's like, what's up? So she goes back toward the house and she sees them out the window looking at her as she goes back inside.
Yeah.
Creepy. I really just enjoyed this one. I really did. With how it all played out, it gave me goosebumps. Yes. It did. It kept you guessing. I was like, what's happening here? Is something about to jump out and get her? Is she going to go back inside with them holding knives at her? Is this a doomsday party and the world really is about to come to an end for these people? Is it a suicide pact? What's happening here?
Yeah, the thing is, there's just enough supernatural elements to this with those moving, misshapen things that are at the base of the trees where I'm like, okay, well...
Does that play a part? What's happening? I think that's the best part, I think, is you really... It leaves you guessing. It leaves it up to interpretation because you really don't know.
And, here's something that I really love about this story. It focuses on the whole cult mentality of the workplace.
Yeah.
Like, we're one big family, It's kind of Jonestown in a sense.
I know. Poor Frances.
Yeah.
The other story I really wanted to talk about was Refinery Road by Stephen Graham Jones. Now, this one opens up with a guy named Jensen. He's reflecting on his youth, and it goes back to a time he was home watching a movie, and he gets a phone call from his friend Kara to ask him to come pick her up. She just had this big altercation with her father. So he goes and picks her up. They're out driving around. They eventually go pick up their mutual friend, Moat. And they're out driving around. They see some cops going, and they follow the cops to the train tracks where they see Kara's father has been hit by a train. Now, after coming across this tragedy, they're freaking out. They hightail it out of there. But they get spotted by the cops. They're chasing them. They end up outrunning the cops and wind up heading toward the refinery. They end up pulling over to catch their bearings a little bit after what just happened. And they happen to notice that they don't pull up on Kara's dad's old house. So they're still trying to figure out what's what, catch themselves, trying to talk it all out, I guess, a little bit. When Kara happens to look over and notices her dead brother, Ben, is sitting beside her.
Like his ghost is just
his
there.
His ghost is sitting
chilled
there.
Out.
Like a normal Tuesday night. So, Jensen and Moat, especially Moat's a smart one. He starts freaking out. He's like, I'm getting out of here.
Hauls ass right down the road, jumps out of the car.
He gone. But Kara, cool, calm, and collected, talking to him like it's nothing, like it's a normal, everyday thing. And she ends up getting out of the car with Ben, tells Jensen, I'm sorry, bye, tell your mama I said I'm sorry. They disappear. Jensen looks, he can't find them or Moat anywhere. So he hightails his butt home. And then the next morning, his mom tells him the unthinkable. This one is probably one of my favorite ones in the book. I really loved it. It kept me on my toes the entire time. I really loved the openness of the ending. Like the way it was written through smoke and mirrors, the way it was, it really left me questioning whether or not Jensen died in the wreck with them too.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was really trippy.
It was.
It could have gone many different ways, I
Mm-hmm.
believe, but
Mm-hmm.
I just really love how it felt. And it almost kind of returned me to when I was a teenager and would like just ride around late at night.
I know, those are good days.
Yeah. My next favorite story was Special Meal by Josh
It
Mailerman.
was a good one. It was a good one.
Now, this story focuses on a young girl named Amy,
Mm-hmm.
and on this particular night, her mother has cooked her favorite meal for dinner. And we soon start to realize that this might not be a celebratory meal.
Mm-hmm.
Because on this particular night, some authorities are supposed to come and question Amy to make sure she doesn't know math. Because in this reality, if you know math, then your life is in danger. From there, her parents are urging to her to do whatever it takes to convince these authorities that she does not know math because they've discovered that she has secretly learned math,
Mm-hmm.
and these authorities might try to trick her.
Mm-hmm.
Well, considering how young Amy is and how the adult mind works,
Mm-hmm.
I instantly knew that this was most likely not going to be a special meal.
Yeah.
It was going to be Amy's last meal.
Yeah.
This story is so damned intense,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes down to invoking emotions in the reader.
Right.
Like, for example, Amy is nothing more than a little girl,
Mm-hmm.
and she has accidentally and secretly taught herself math.
Mm-hmm.
Which, like, she's just kind of been observant with everything, and she's like, all right, well, if this is that, then that is this,
Mm-hmm.
and she learns that way. And when her family finds this out, her brother, he just kind of stays quiet about it. But
Mm-hmm.
her parents are freaking the hell out, and they are pounding into her head to
Mm-hmm.
play dumb. When these
You know
authority
nothing.
figures come around, they are going to try to trick you.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you do, just act like you don't know
You
anything.
know nothing.
And the degree of dread in her parents,
Mm-hmm.
it
Understandably so.
it got to me so much. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a parent, I don't plan to be a parent, and I don't care to be a parent,
Mm-hmm.
but like, their emotions were just so real and so raw.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to think that if I were a parent, then this story would hit me like a million times harder. Then, after going through those emotions, the authorities show up, and even though their questioning is nothing more than basic Q&A,
Mm-hmm.
how it's
Mm-hmm.
done is just so nerve-wracking.
Right.
And I was sitting there the whole time just making fists like, oh my
Oh, I
god,
know, me
she's
too.
going to slip.
Me
And the
too.
thing is, she does slip. But
But she recovers.
yeah,
She
yeah, she
recovers.
covers it over pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And so they determine that she doesn't know math, and they leave. And there's that, she made it. Good
We can
deal.
breathe again.
We can breathe.
Mm-hmm.
But then her brother runs outside and sells her out by screaming that she knows math, and the authorities come back and take her away. And even though the story doesn't explain what happens to people who know math,
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, I'm thinking it is some horrible, horrible shit that does not need to be translated onto page, especially in regards to this little girl. We would like to take this opportunity to bitch.
Right. And today I would like to take the opportunity to bitch about the so-called Mother and Take Me I'm Free by Joyce Carol oats. Now, to give a little bit of insight into the story, it's about this mother who claims she does not have postpartum depression. However, she really believes her daughter is this perverse, unnatural thing that she just doesn't want. So she decides to put her daughter outside, hoping somebody will take her. This woman is a piece of crap. I understand not everybody needs to be a parent. They really shouldn't. It's not for everybody. It's hard. I get it. But if you make the decision that you are going to have this child, give birth to this child, and keep this child, then it is your responsibility to take care of this child. If you are that unhappy, go live your best life. I felt so bad for this poor little girl. She did not deserve the abuse, the neglect she had been receiving, to be set outside with a sign like that. She could have been hurt. She could have been kidnapped. She could have got sick out in the rain like that. Thank God she has a father who loves her, or at least I hope so. I hope he does. He needs to wise up, and I hope he rises up and kicks that wife of his to the curb.
Here's the thing. I had problems with the mother and father in this story.
Right, because he knew.
Right? And the thing is, like, the mother, she is doing this horrible crap to her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She's denying that she has a problem, which I really do believe she had postpartum, even though she said she didn't.
She says she don't.
Denial ain't just a river in Egypt.
Right.
And, of course, the first step to admitting you have a problem is to verbally admit you have a problem.
It's the first step to get help.
It is. And so there's that, but also at the same time, the father, if I were in his shoes, I would be urging my wife to get help or to go to couples therapy. To do something
or get out
versus just letting this happen,
letting it continue.
And I mean, who knows, maybe she discovered this was not her cup of tea. It's not what she wanted. Okay, you know what, that's fine, we'll get a divorce. You don't want the kid, I'll take the kid. You go do you
go live your best life. You can go do that.
But the thing is, and I think that the problem with this story, which this wasn't one of my favorites.
Mine either, not really, but
it was way too short.
Very short. There was no real.
It
was no story.
Even though there was some character development on the mother's side of everything, I really wish that we could have gained some insight into if anyone had ever tried to help her or the circumstance. But it just kind of hovers there.
Right.
It stays toxic. I would like to take this opportunity to bitch about the bastard in the story called In the Deep Woods, The Light is Different There by Seanan McGuire.
Oh, that's a good one.
Now, to shine some light on this subject, this is about a lady named Millie who has recently divorced a bastard. And to move on with her life, she's moved into her grandparents' cabin, where in the summers, that's where they would stay until her grandparents mysteriously disappeared. Well, her first night there, she ends up hearing a coyote outside. But to make things even more unsettling, she discovers that there's an intruder in the house, which she identifies as being her dipshit ex-husband. So, at this point, she hides in the wardrobe, and this is when the old asshole gets got. Then, because of what we learn the next day, we can assume that the family who takes care of this house and property is actually a family of shapeshifters, and they killed the old dipshit to protect her. Which, of course, she ends up staying there because she feels safe with them.
I would too.
Not gonna lie, I would stay there for the same reason. But if I found out that these shapeshifters were killing assholes who I didn't like, you better believe I'd be luring some shitheads out there. When Things Get Dark, edited by Ellen Datlow, was full of spooky goodness. And I really think that it's the perfect book to read during summer or fall.
I agree.
And out of the 18 stories, I really felt like 8 of those were absolutely amazing, 4 were good, 1 was okay, and 3 just weren't my cup of tea. which out of the stories that I absolutely loved, my top 5 favorite would be For Sale by Owner, Special Mill, In the Deep Woods, The Light is Different There, Quiet Dead Things, and A Trip to Paris.
Now, for me, out of the 18 stories, I thought 7 were really great. 5 were good, 3 were okay, and 3 were just not my cup of tea. Now, out of my top 7, my favorite out of that was For Sale by Owner, The Party,
Yes.
Refinery Road, Special Meal, and In the Deep Woods, The Light is Different There.
As I previously mentioned, we aren't experts when it comes down to Shirley Jackson.
Mm-mm.
But as we were buddy reading this with our good online friend Hanny, it really felt like stories such as Funeral Birds by M. Rickert and A Trip to Paris by Richard Kadrey really had strong vibes that reminded us of We Have Always Lived in the Castle.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it came down to the weapon of choice being poison.
Right.
But at the same time, the story Pair of Anguish by Gemma Files felt like it paid a great respect to the characters of Merricat and Constance Blackwood.
Mm-hmm. Also, we noticed where tales like For Sale by Owner by Elizabeth Hand held strong Hill House vibes. And there was also a lot of folk horror mixed in with this anthology regarding like small town secrets and traditions. Like we have In the Deep Woods, The Light is Different There by Shauna McGuire, Quiet Dead Things by Cassandra Call, and The Hag by Benjamin Percy.
Then we have stories like The Party by Paul Tremblay and Special Mill by Josh Mailerman that focus on mob and cult mentalities, which these subjects were really strong in Jackson's classic The Lottery.
Also, the story Something Like Living Creatures by John Langan was a fun little surprise, as it really reminded me of how Jackson had wrote in her 2 daughters into We Always Lived in a Castle. And Langan really presents this fictionalized family that could easily pass as Shirley Jackson and her 2 daughters. And I really appreciated that nod because it was said Jackson practiced witchcraft and mysticism.
Overall, there weren't any stories in this book that grossed me out, which you don't really expect gross outs when you read Shirley Jackson. So I, of course, wasn't expecting for there to be any gross outs here. However, there were a few stories that actually did scare me, and there were a few stories that really did creep me out.
Like, the book never really scared me or grossed me out or anything. Like, Refinery Road did give me a couple goosebumps. A couple stories really kept me on my toes, and it kept me guessing and thinking. And one story did tick me off.
Totally. This is a very thought-provoking book. It's good to buddy read it with people because, of course, you'll get a lot of different views and feedback and everything, but yeah, it's definitely thought-provoking.
It is.
When Things Get Dark, edited by Ellen Datlow, was a fun and creepy read. And very much like Shirley Jackson, a lot of these stories are open, which means it's not going to be spoon-fed to you. And there are still a few stories where I'm kind of like, what the hell happened here? But in all honesty, sometimes not knowing is scarier than knowing.
Right. I highly recommend the book. It just has so many stories in it, something for everybody to enjoy, and it gave me all the right Jackson feels.
Totally. And I recommend this as well, especially if you're looking for a book that honors Shirley Jackson. Well, now that we have everything covered, I would just like to say thank you for coming back to the show.
Thank you for having me back. I really enjoyed it. So much fun.
Of course. And hopefully this year, if the stars align to our favor, we can buddy read a Halloween book together.
Yes, we got to. We have got to buddy read a Halloween book and at least a Christmas horror book. We've got to. The experience, so much fun. I know. I need to do the Christmas horror because I still haven't finished Krampus.
Oh, well, maybe this year.
This Christmas is going to be the year. Life happens. I just haven't finished it.
Well, hopefully I can have you back sooner than later.
Oh, definitely.
And until we see you again, thank you.
Thank you.
Also, before I close out, I would like to thank these amazing people for contributing to my Patreon account. As you can tell, some of the names listed here are creators, so be sure to check out their work. And if you would like to contribute to my Patreon account, I have a link available in the description section of this episode, where for $5 a month, I'll give you a shout out at the end of my videos, like how you see here. And if there is a certain profession you would like for me to tie to your name, just let me know and I'll include that as well. Also, I do have a $10 tier available, where for $10 a month, I'll still give you the shout out like what you see here, but I do creepy photography on the side, so at the beginning of every month, I'll send you over one of my creepy photos. From there, you can print it off, do whatever you like. So if you're able to do this, that's awesome. If not, no sweat. I just hope you return to this channel so we can have a good time together. And if you would like to hit me up on social media, links to my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are all available in the description section of this episode. And if you would like to spoil me, I have a link to my Amazon wish list as well. And if you have not subscribed to this channel, be sure to subscribe and click that notifications bell, because I have more book reviews coming in the near future. So until we see each other again, I hope everyone has a great week and sweet nightmares.